Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello there, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Attacking Blues podcast with, of course, myself and my co-host, Mr. Jimmy Funnell. Jimmy, how are you doing?
Bored, very much bored in this international break, but otherwise good.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, I don't think many people have had as much of an enjoyable international break as I did. I went to Amsterdam with my family, then I went to the Formula One in Italy where Ferrari won. I'm Ferrari fans. I had a great time. But other than that, the international break is every year it's just a bit boring, especially that first one in September when you're like, the season has just got underway. I mean, in England, it's a bit better because we start a bit earlier. But in like Italy and Germany, they only had like 2 match days and then there's an international break. It's just so silly. But yeah, I mean, it is the international break, but obviously we're still going to provide you with the podcast this week. I hope you guys do enjoy it, of course. And if you are new here, please do subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated. You know, follow us on the iTunes for the podcast over there. Spotify, give us a good rating. And yeah, obviously also drop a like on this. That would be great. But yeah, let's just talk about it because there are not that many things to talk about this week. I mean, there's a couple of injuries things, you know, news, I guess, that we could touch on, a couple of international break things, but neither Jimmy nor myself are huge into international football unless it's a, I guess, major tournament, I guess. And obviously then we'll be touching on the game against Wolves on Saturday because that will most certainly not be an easy game. And I think the first thing to touch on, because it is arguably the biggest news, was, of course, Emerson getting injured during the international break in Italy's game against Finland as he came off after like 6 or 8 minutes or something with some sort of a, muscle problem, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, first, we obviously were all like shitting ourselves, basically. Like, everyone was losing their mind. Oh, right, we're absolutely fucked now because now we have to play Alonso against Wolves and Liverpool. And our defence isn't particularly great as it is already. And now imagine that. But I guess nerves were slightly calmed, you know, in a few hours later or the next day or whatever it was, when this, you know, news came out that Emerson's injury wasn't actually serious. The manager even said, or Mancini, I think is the Italy manager these days, said, you know, it wasn't a serious injury, basically came off before it got too you know, serious, which I love, basically prioritizing club football over the country, which I generally think is a good idea. But yeah, so that is obviously good. We don't know at this stage whether he will be fit for Wolves or not. He should, you know, if it's not a serious injury, should be fine for Liverpool next week, possibly for Champions League, although I do expect Alonso to play in Champions League anyway, just for rotation, even though it might not work that well, but we need to rotate them at some point if we, you know, play 2 games a week. But yeah, what do you make of it? And what do we do? Oh, what's our situation if Emerson isn't fit to play against Wolves?
Well, it's the typical scenario, right? I mean, no one really likes the international break too much. And then one of your best players, actually our best performing player this season up until now, is injured. I mean, it's minor. That's good. But that it even happened is just so frustrating because we've been struggling and we need some consistency in him now, maybe missing the Wolves game or, you know, hopefully not, but also Liverpool would be, I don't want to say catastrophic, but it wouldn't be good, you know, thinking about Liverpool or even Wolves, you know, Diego Jota or Adama Traore going up against Marcus Alonso isn't necessarily a thought that people will, you know, be very fond of. Stuff of nightmares, really. So that could be a big blow for us. It's not going to be an easy game against Wolves as it is, and losing Emerson is just saddening, really is. But can't be helped. We can only hope that he gets, you know, healthy again very, very quickly. And as you said, to be fair, it's great that they immediately took him off. They didn't, you know, risk anything. And, you know, who knows? Could have been even worse otherwise.
For sure. And I guess Italy won the game anyway. So in the end, didn't really matter with Jorginho actually scoring the winner from the penalty spot. But like I said in the beginning, we are not that deeply into international football. But there are, of course, a couple of things that maybe we should mention. For example, Mason Mount making his England debut first in their game against. Who was the first game against again?
The first game was against
Good knowledge
remembering.
here of attacking
Yeah,
groups.
just to point that out, it might sound sad, but England always performs very well in the qualifiers, and it's mostly never really a competition because they just completely kill it off. Yeah, they're really good. And then at the tournament, it's a bit of a. I mean, they did get into the semi-finals last year. Can't take that away from them, but it's just the qualifiers are so boring. It's more interesting for Laurenz and I living in Austria to watch Austrian national team play because basically you never know what you'll get. You know, it might win, might lose. It's always a tricky situation to qualify. So being a Brit, that's kind of a, one always likes to support the underdog, and it's just more of a thrill. And England just isn't. And I looked at the score. I think Harry Kane and Sterling did score in that game, the first one, but I just can't put my finger on who they played against.
Yeah, no, I've got it up now. They played against Bulgaria, won the game 4-0. Harry Kane
Right.
with the hat trick, and Sterling with the other. And Mason Mount came on in the 67th minute, making his England debut. Obviously, probably would have made it already last season when he was still with Derby, when he did get his call up. Then he picked up a minor injury, which meant that he didn't actually feature, which was obviously slightly disappointing. But he did get his debut now, which of course, congratulations to him. I'm not English, but I'm sure it's a great thing to make a debut for the national team. And I mean, you mentioned the qualifier thing, but they did make it kind of tricky against Kosovo last night when they beat them 5-3, but 5-1 up at halftime. Well, I mean, they were 1-0 down in the first minute, but then 5-1 up, absolutely battered them. But then Kosovo got one back. Then Maguire with one of the silliest penalties to give away you'll ever see. Got it back to 5-3. Then Kane missed the penalty to make it 6-3. And Kosovo had their chances to make it, 5-4. And if it's 5-4, that would have been a very, very shaky end. But did obviously see it out and Mason Mount again. Came on this time for Ross Barkley, who is England's number 10, which is even worse than William being our number 10. That's just an absolute embarrassment. And yes, I know he took a good corner yesterday, but other than that, as usually, was absolutely shocking. Got a penalty that, in my opinion, was never, ever a penalty. But, I guess it is what it is. And obviously, there are a lot of other players, from Chelsea that played in the international break. Drew played for France. But is it that interesting? Not really. No one, to my knowledge, except Emerson, picked up any injuries. So I guess, let's kind of gloss over the international break now and talk about some slightly happier, injury news, I guess, because, of course, now with the Wolves game, we are expecting a couple of people back from injury. With the likes of Antonio Rudiger, of course, he's already played 2 games for the under-23s, so should really be fully fit now. But also the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi and Reece James are back in full training, as far as I'm aware. Whether they will actually be involved against Wolves straight away would surprise me, because why would they be? And Rudiger wasn't. I would see it as more likely maybe they'll also feature for the under-23s, under-21s a couple of times before they actually feature in the first team, even though Frank Lampard didn't mention that. But if Rudiger did, why wouldn't they? So we'll just have to wait and see about that. And also N'Golo Kanté, we don't know actually that for sure, because Frank was like, he'll hope to have him back for Wolves, but that injury of his seems to be a bit of a weird one. Obviously, he had that knee problem around the Europa League final, which he suffered with throughout pre-season, and then that ankle problem he picked up at United. Then still played Liverpool and Leicester, and then was out since. It's a bit of a weird one, but let's hope he's back. And that would obviously make a huge difference to our team with Hudson-Odoi, Reece James, Rudiger, and N'Golo Kanté being fit. That would obviously be big. Ruben Loftus-Cheek will still be a while, but other than that, and now obviously Emerson, we're now, I guess, almost back to a full squad, which is, of course, good. And that's the question, I guess, to be had. Will it make a big difference performance and results-wise, or will it be similar struggles? Will we not be particularly great defensively and just kind of hope to outscore everyone, which we weren't capable of doing against Sheffield United?
Well, I mean, we can't expect that, these youngsters, let's say as it is, even though I'm just as excited as everyone else that they're finally back, and I'm putting a lot of hope, especially in Reece James. We can't expect, immediate results to, our change, that our fortunes change to the better, for the better, sorry. And, everything's great again. But what we can do is be excited about that the easing in process is finally starting, that we can hopefully see progress in regard to Callum Hudson-Odoi working well together with maybe Emerson. I mean, that was a combination that I was actually quite excited about at the back of last season. We'll have this debate about Reece James. You know, at least Cesar Azpilicueta now has competition. He didn't have that, and it's not been a good time for him recently. I think we've discussed that already in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, it's just competition for places again. Even though people are saying, well, you know, Reece James, what could he bring to the team? He's only been in the championship. We're putting too much pressure on him. That might be true. However, Mason Mount was just in the championship last year, and look, he's one of our star performers this season.
So was Sammy Abraham.
Surreal as it sounds, exactly. So even though we're putting our trust in championship players to further a team like Chelsea, which people think is like a downgrade, and so it's our youth. We loaned them out because we had, you know, invested time in them because we saw potential, and we're, you know, reaping the rewards of that now. So if the championship player is going to be the player to bring balance to our defense, then so be it. I couldn't care less. You know, for all I care, it could be a 16-year-old. You know, I don't care as long as our defensive problems / woes are finally resolved.
Yeah. I mean, I generally agree on that. Sorry, go on.
No, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think that Reece James going to immediately come in? Because Lampard did make some comments that alluded to that.
I think once he's fully fit, he will, but I don't like fully match fit because being back in full training doesn't mean you're fully match fit. So I would hope that, you know, say in the Champions League against Valencia, even though Valencia is everything but an easy game, hence is why I think I brought this up on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. Maybe being in Europa League wouldn't actually have been that bad for such kind of things, because then you could just start him anyway against Valencia, trying to get out of the group, which is not the toughest group. We will touch on the group because we didn't actually mention that last week as well. But, you know, if you want to get out of the group, you can't take it too lightly, especially teams like Valencia. But yeah, I do expect him to get in, say, by the latest October. Like, once he gets his first start, I think he will make that place his own, because I don't think Frank Lampard can be and is particularly happy with Azpilicueta either. And people say, what can he bring? Well, everything. Because I would argue that except positioning and experience, he's probably better at everything than Azpi. He's quicker, he's better on the ball, he's a better crosser, he's a, you know, much stronger. So everything except, like I say, the experience and the positioning bit. And, you know, that will take time for anyone. Yeah, I agree on the whole thing. We can't expect the youth to make everything better, but we also have Rudiger and N'Golo Conte coming back, which, you know, that's not youth coming back to hopefully make things better. And if these reports that apparently Hudson-Odoi is getting £180,000 a week, which I'm still not sure whether it's actually 100, and then if you add up all the bonuses, count that over a year, then you divide that by 52, that would make it 180. Still not sure about that, but if he actually gets a plain standard £180,000 a week contract, that's it with me seeing him as a youth player. Because if you're on 180k, you're not a youth player. I don't care. And if you like decide in January, I want to leave to Bayern Munich, and then you end up getting a £180,000 contract, which, if I'm not mistaken, would be a second highest paid player in the squad behind N'Golo Conte. I could be wrong.
With Hazard leaving,
So, you know, when you think about it that way, I'm like, well, I can't see his youth. I will, of course, give him the time because he's coming back from a very long-term injury. So not as in, plays his first game, expect him to, you know, batter everyone and everything, but not because of his age anymore. You can't be on 180k and have the youth, you know, excuse. It doesn't work that way, in my opinion. But it does work for Reece James. And the question that I would like to put to you is, you know, as we kind of, I guess, touch on the Wolves game now, do you think anyone that's not a youth product will finally score for Chelsea this season? Or will it still be Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, and those kind of people?
That is a good question. I mean, you know, ultimately, who really scores for us as long as they score. But
it's just funny.
I know. But yeah, that is a very, very difficult question. I don't know. You know, it's being a bit ridiculous there that there's no other scorers at the moment. I mean, I can always see, you know, it's a weird one. He's been playing pretty poorly recently, but inconsistently, so at least, is Pedro. You know, I can always see Pedro coming up with a goal out of nowhere. You know, like that's one of his feats, that he can be crap all game or for a few games and then suddenly score a banger, as against Salzburg in pre-season. But you know, he normally always scores like these fantastic goals, has shown that in the past. So he could come up with the goods against Wolves. You know, I don't know if he's going to start. I don't think Callum Hudson-Odoi is going to start. Let's just be completely honest. If he is able to start Callum Hudson-Odoi, or any of, Reece James or so, and they're fit enough, I can imagine that Frank Lampard would want to bring them into the team as soon as possible. If Wolves is most certainly going to be too early, but if he'd even be on the substitute bench, that will be already a huge lift. As we could at least have someone to come off the bench who can provide some threat, because that was always a problem in the last few games. Willian coming off the bench, and I don't care what people say, good servant, yeah, sure, but his attitude's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. His body language when he was going on, he lost the ball, he jogs, hands in the air, jog. I just hate Willian in that regard. He really is not the player that people make him out to be more often than not. But, he hates Tottenham, so everything's good.
It does make it better, certainly. Imagine he did hate Tottenham. He would still be the player he is.
The problem is, I hate Tottenham. Where's my money? Why am I not playing for Chelsea? It's just...
Yeah, no, I get you. I mean, I still personally would say start Willian against Wolves, just because Pedro just starts now. Hasn't done much.
Please, no.
But Pedro hasn't done anything. Like, Willian can't do worse than Pedro, with how Pedro has done so far. So, in that sense, I'm like, might as well. To me, Willian has always been better as a starter rather than a substitute, while Pedro is, if anything, the other way around in his Chelsea career. So the Pedro goal you on about, see that more likely if he comes on with 20 minutes to go. But like you say, the Hudson-Odoi thing, he's been in training a little while longer than Reece James as well. So maybe there is a small chance that he's on the bench and comes on for the last 10, 15, 20 minutes. I don't know whether, we should expect that. I think we'll find out more in, obviously, Lampard's press conference on Friday. Could possibly touch on that if, hopefully, the journalists ask him about it. But generally, the Wolves game is a really tricky game. Like, Wolves away, generally, I'm going into that game being happy if we get a draw. Like, as much as our last game against Sheffield wasn't great and we could really, really do with a win, I would be happy if we got a draw at Wolves, because they know what they're doing. Nuno Gomez does know. Is it Nuno Gomez or Nuno Santos? I always mix it up.
Nuno Santos, I think. Nuno de San. I don't know. Nuno.
Just Nuno. Nuno, the Wolves manager. He knows what he's doing. It's a very interesting mix of a 3 at the back, 5 at the back, 3-4-3, 3-5-2. It's very, very interesting. Sometimes pressing, sometimes sitting very deep and hitting unbelievably quickly on the count. And their midfield too, especially, arguably even counting the Donker into that, even though he's playing centre back. I think, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he is.
Well, he has been playing prevalently in midfield, if I'm not mistaken. But now with Bolly, and actually, just mentioning that because I think I'd nearly forgotten that. Bolly is their best defender, in my opinion. He really is fantastic in all aspects. But he's going to be not able to play against because he got a red card in the last game. So that is good. We shouldn't be relying on other people's misfortune, so to speak, for us to win. Don't get me wrong. But at the moment, I'll take anything. So that's a lift.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I agree. Yeah, definitely. But again, that midfield, Ruben Neves, João Moutinho, Dendoncker, they're just a couple of really, really, really good players in there, considering obviously they have that, Portuguese affiliation clearly with, I think, obviously the agent that is agent of a lot of Portuguese players and involved the club to an extent. But they know what they're doing. They were difficult to, obviously we lost at their place last season. It's not like that was a game that we should have lost. Like, even though the early goal that Ruben scored in that game was lucky because it was a serious deflection, we had the chances to be 2 or 3 up by then. Morata kind of missed from about 2 yards. He didn't actually miss. He was a bit unfortunate with that because it was a great tackle by, I think, Connor Cody. That just about kind of just nutmegged Morata as Morata was about to tap it in from 2 yards. So we could have been 2 up, and then it's just, I guess, 2 almost defensive frailties or 2 defensive fuck ups from the entire team, and then we lost 2-1 at home. We drew with them 1-0, I think. So it's definitely not an easy place to go, an easy team to play against.
No.
But to this same extent, I mean, we've been decent going forward. Even against teams that haven't conceded much, that are pretty good defensively. So just score 2 goals and be a bit better defensively, and we could get a win. We could at least get a point, and that would, I guess, be a start. But what I would like to ask is, formation-wise, assuming that bar Rudiger and Kante, none of the other returning, players returning from injury are going to be fit to start, what kind of changes would you make to the team? Do you expect a 4-3-3 again that sometimes turns into a 4-2-3-1 and no one knows when and why? Or do you expect something actually different?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're going to then share your thoughts on this, but I'm just not 100% sure whether Rudiger is the solution to our defensive problems as people make him out to be. He's had his troubles last season himself, where I was at a point where I thought, bloody hell, I want someone else to come in. And I don't know, it's tricky because Kante, we need him in. If he's in any way fit to start, he has to. But he seems to have become a bit injury prone, which is extremely, extremely worrying because he's our last world-class player. Let's face it, he is our last world-class player. And without him, I don't know, we just don't play as well. Kovacic, wasn't he also injured a bit?
He was. Now you mention it, he was at the start of the international break, the very start before Croatia ever played a game. He had to pull out with an inflamed Achilles, as it was reported. First, he said Achilles injury. Everyone, again, a bit like with Emerson, was losing their mind. Turns out it was just an inflamed Achilles, which can mean a lot of things. Could mean a couple of days out, could mean 6 weeks out. Inflammations take different times to, I guess, calm down, I guess. So actually, that's another one that we're not sure about whether he will be fit. Thank you for mentioning that. But again, that's another one we'll just find out on Friday when Lampard, I'd hope, speaks about it in the press conference. But that makes Kante coming back even more important, I guess, if Kovacic is fit, because Kovacic has done a decent job, not Kante's job, but a decent job, especially against who was it before Sheffield?
It was Norwich.
Norwich, yes. Yeah. He was very good in that. He was good against Sheffield, but not as good as he was against Norwich. Also played on the other side where I didn't like him as much. But, generally, I mean, I know Mason Mount has been playing on the left constantly. I don't want to see that. Not because I don't think he's good there, but because I'm like, so he's by far the best. His by far best position is in the middle, but it's as an 8 or as a 10. And then we play him out on the wing. And I get it. But playing where he's best, not play Ross Barkley.
But if he does want to play Ross Barkley, then at least play Mason Mount on the wing because he's more threatening. He's at least doing something on the wing, even though it's not a perfect fit. But he's better than Barkley there. Barkley, he's not good on the wings at all.
Yeah, well, I would argue he's not good anywhere. But except
fair point.
Yeah, I said that ahead of the Sheffield game. I just wanted some more pace in the wing, which is why I say start Willian and Pulisic. Pedro isn't particularly quick anymore. Hasn't been for a number of years. And Willian is still quick. We can, rage about certain other things about him, but he's quick. And Mason Mount is quicker than Barkley as well in the middle. So just for that pace reason is why Mount in the middle and Pulisic and Willian on the wings. But yeah, the Barkley thing, and just touching on Rudiger, because obviously you mentioned it. I agree that he might very well not be the solution, but I feel like at this point, with how many goals we've conceded, which is a ridiculous amount compared to last season, where bar David Luiz, it was pretty much the same team, and even the tactics aren't that different. Like defensive tactics aren't that different. So I'm slightly confused as to why it's so much worse. But I feel like with how many goals we have conceded, I feel like everyone deserves a chance. Like Tomori got his chance last time. Everyone has to be tried out to see what works best. Whether Rudiger then ends up being the final solution or not, we don't know. But clearly, the combinations of Zuma and Christensen, or the combination of Zuma and Tomori, didn't really work that well either because we keep conceding goals. So I think Rudiger, deserves his chance to like show whether he is the solution or not. But yeah, I mean, I would always go with the 4-3-3. I mean, I wouldn't mind a 4-4-2 diamond, but we don't really have enough midfielders for that right now. So 4-3-3. Kante ideally he's back. Kovacic, like I say, Mason Mount in that middle, and then we can do with Kovacic whatever we need to if he is fit. And Jorginho obviously is playing because without him, in my opinion, there's not much happening in our team anyways. Going forward, Pulisic probably stay on, even though he's not been great. I mean, he obviously got the assist against Norwich, but generally he's not. He struggled a little bit to get into games, which was interesting. Not even always down to him. He's not really received that many balls in anyone near what you'd call a decent position. He's always surrounded by two people when he receives the ball, and all he can do is kind of just pass it back to Aspie or pass it back to the midfielder rather than actually do something with the ball. And we just don't. Yes, he doesn't make enough of those runs, but there's just not many balls in behind to the wings, which is where David Luiz is missing, because I'm sure we'd have a bit more of that if David Luiz was playing. But Jorginho plays a lot of over-the-top balls, but always to the striker. Never or very rarely out to the winger that probably makes the winger run and just pushes them up the field. But yeah, Pulisic, I mentioned do a brilliant thing on the other side. We'll just have to wait and see what Frank Lampard does. Definitely a difficult game that I'm just hoping, please don't lose again. Please don't concede 2 or more again. A clean sheet would be good. Definitely don't see it happening against Wolves though. So yeah.
I've already made a prediction in my other podcasts that we're going to lose, unfortunately. I know that sounds very pessimistic, but I'm absolutely shitting myself, against Wolves. And you know what? I actually fear them more than Liverpool, because we showed already we can play against Liverpool, because I don't know, big club, Champions League winner, we kind of step up. It's as if in the minds of our players, it's okay, we really have to give our all here. But against the teams that have been more of a, they are secretly really good, that they could be contenders, even for that, top 6, not the Champions League spots necessarily, but definitely the Europa League spots. And we've just underestimated them. I don't know if it's complacency, can't say, but it's just been terrible. Against Leicester, we were terrible in that second half. And I mean, I fear them more. I'll be completely honest. I fear them more than Liverpool.
Yeah, you'd hope it's a case of learning from their mistakes. I mean, the Leicester one, still fatigue, in my opinion, played a big part in that game, because early on we were incredibly good rather than underestimating them. And then obviously the fact that we didn't actually beat Wolves last year, and pretty much all of the players except the young ones were here already. Do you think they take it seriously? Possibly in a way, maybe not just as much, but in a way as they do against Liverpool. Like, okay, we need to step up here. First of all, we need a win. Secondly, we need to be better defensively. And thirdly, we couldn't even beat them last year, so let's bloody beat them now. And also learning from that whole Leicester game. So that would be my hope. But yeah, I mean, that is one of them games where every result is possible. Like, we could lose quite a high margin if things don't go well. I don't think so, because I think we'll score a couple. But we could most certainly lose. A draw, in my opinion, I guess the most likely outcome. And we could obviously win. Like, just be a bit better defensively, just be a bit more fortunate, because some of the goals we've conceded, I'm like, you don't score that very often, do you? Also, we need to hopefully have improved our set pieces, which would be good. Because
they've been terrible for a long time. Yeah,
defending those has been a problem. If Alonso plays over Emerson, he wasn't on international duty. Rudiger obviously wasn't on international duty, but Christensen, Zuma, and I think tomorrow with the under-21s of England were. So, let's see how much we'd actually have improved. Aspie also was, obviously not international duty. So hopefully we'd have worked on that and improved on that. It's a tough one. I don't really know what to predict. I'm predicting a draw, probably like a 1-1 or 2-1. I think it's the most likely. I'm just hoping for that win, hoping for another, like, I don't know, brace or hat-trick by Tammy Abraham, give Mason Mount a goal, and then we just win 6-2 or something. That'd be fun.
Thinking, yeah.
Yeah, wishful thinking. That is true. But one last thing, unless you have anything more to add about Wolves. is obviously the thing that we didn't actually mention last week. Don't really know why, because obviously we recorded straight after the Sheffield game. It wasn't really in our mind. The whole Champions League draw, which obviously took place on the Thursday before the Sheffield game. Obviously, the Champions League campaign then starts next Tuesday. I think it's next Tuesday that we play our first game next week anyway. And we were drawn against in a tough but doable group. Like, it's not a horrendous group in my opinion. Obviously from pot 2 we got Ajax, again, which I will be attending. I mean, I haven't got the ticket yet, but I booked my flights, so that's good. Looking forward to that. And Ajax, difficult team, but let's not forget who they lost in De Ligt and De Jong. And having seen their qualifiers against Apoel Nicosia, which they were very fortunate to draw 0-0 in the first leg. Yes, they beat them 2-0 in the second leg, but even then, they weren't that much better. At first leg, I was like, you are shocking these days. Like, I haven't seen them in the Eredivisie, but, they weren't that good. And it really seemed like they were, that played a big, losing De Ligt and De Jong, really hampered them. At the same time, by the time we played them, they might have just got used to that. So the younger players that stepped up or came in instead of them might have just improved. So maybe they won't even be that much worse by the time we actually play them. But still not. You can't expect an Ajax like they were last season. Like, when you see Ajax, don't expect the Ajax to play last season and beat Juventus and beat Madrid and should have beaten Spurs. Don't expect that Ajax, in my opinion. The other teams that we drew were from pot 3, Valencia. Never easy. But that difficult. Like, anyone that's not top 3 in Spain isn't that good, really. And even at Real Madrid and Barcelona, at the moment, are awful. They can't seem to win a game in La Liga. Like, I don't know what they're doing, but they can't seem to win a game. And then from pot 4, it was Lille, obviously from France, which is a weird one. Definitely could have been a lot easier in that draw. At the same time, it's very short travel, which is good, especially for
they all are.
Yeah, that is obviously very fortunate. I mean, Valencia isn't short, but it's not like awful. Like, it's more than it's a 2-hour flight or so.
It's not bad, and Ajax, Amsterdam.
Yeah,
it's also just a short flight. So generally, we could have done much worse. Like somewhere out east or something like that,
like Moscow or whatever.
Yeah, so we can't complain on that front. There are people that have a lot worse. I've had a lot of had a much worse draw. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be too overconfident. As you said, Valencia's never easy, even though they haven't had the best start to the campaign this year.
Seems like no one in Spain has had a good start to the campaign.
No, and Lille is a very exciting team. They're a very, very young team. They've got a few very exciting players. They also signed quite a few players that I'd say are exciting, like Timothy Weah, who is of what was his name?
George.
Why was I thinking of John? George Weah's son, top product. So very talented.
At the same time, they obviously lost significant players as well. Obviously, lost Pepe, which is kind of a big thing. Wasn't Sam Maxime with Lille as well? No, he was with Nice, wasn't he?
No, he was with Nice, yeah. But
similar
colour. Yeah, I think Thiago Maia left as well.
Yeah.
It was a good midfielder for them. But still.
Yeah, no, without that, it won't be easy. Like I said, in that pot 4, we definitely could have had easier. But we also could have had Leipzig, which would have been an awful draw from pot 4 because they're a good team, had a good start to the Bundesliga as well. So it's not too bad. I think going into the group, we should be able to expect to go through, whether that's first or second, don't know. But we should be allowed to expect to go through that group. Like coming third in that, let alone coming fourth in that, although I probably prefer fourth than third just because it saves us games. Yeah, I think we have to expect to be able to get past that. Like at home, we should beat really all of them. And then Valencia, Ajax, and especially those two will see their form and stuff when we play them away and live. Like we should beat them away as well. Like when they don't have lost, they're definitely their best player in Pepe and Thiago as well. Like even if they replaced them, they couldn't have possibly replaced them like equally or 1-for-1 rather, as in ability wise. We should be able to get past that. Like some people told me it's such an awfully tough group. I'm like, I don't really know where you got that from. Like we could have had bloody Real Madrid and we got Ajax in pot 2. Like how can you cry?
I think people are still a bit blinded from last year, as
Yeah.
you already mentioned. Don't get me wrong; they've still got great players in Onana, in Neres, in Suchek. Tadic is, still a pretty decent player himself,
Van der
and
Beek is always good.
several others. Van der Beek, yeah. So they still have great players, and underestimating them would be a great mistake.
Yeah.
But generally, still, we avoided the big dogs, so we can't complain. We just simply can't. And personally, I know Delay was a huge player for them. He was, but what made that team tick was Frankie de Jong, without a doubt. And he's no longer there, so that is definitely a good thing, because I'd really say his loss, or their loss of him, it's about of the magnitude as Eden Hazard for us.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a great start for Barcelona, but yeah, he was.
No one has nowadays. Coutinho, Dembele.
Until Messi comes back, don't expect Barcelona to win much. That's just how it works at Barcelona. Almost depressingly, but that's how good he is, I guess. But yeah, I mean, especially the general play, I would agree. But defensively, I do think losing De Ligt makes a big difference. And also leader-wise, I know he was only 19, but he was very obviously a huge leader on the pitch, which is never easy to replace, especially when the rest of the team is very young and you don't get leaders like De Ligt at 19 very often. Like, they don't come around very often at all. So that would have, I'm sure it does play a big part as well. But yeah, anything else that you wanted to add? Because otherwise I'm kind of running out of things, because it's international break and Wolves ahead, I guess.
Yeah, no, not really much. One thing I will say is that it will be interesting to see how Frank Lampard has taken the time after these first few games to reflect and possibly come up with solutions to our problems. That is something that hasn't necessarily shown yet. So it will be exciting. And even if we don't get too much, if we draw against Wolves and lose against Liverpool, for example, that will be pretty bad, because I'd love us to win against Wolves and get a draw against Liverpool. But even if that does happen, I wouldn't panic, because after that we have a pretty good run of games, like 7 games or something against bottom half teams, where one would expect us to win. And what most importantly is the case, we can gather some momentum. We win a few on the bounce and suddenly things don't look as bad. Yeah. I mean, of course, we want those Champions League places, spots, but let's be honest.
Let's not expect that.
Exactly. We can't put too much pressure on. This is a transitional year. People have to understand that, because especially we haven't had the transfer market. If we can then buy in January, it'll be interesting to see what Frank Lampard once implemented in this team. But for now, it's utopian to think that everything will click immediately. But nevertheless, very, very, very looking forward to and intrigued about how Frank Lampard will have worked on his tactics over this international break. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, without doubt. I generally wouldn't say adapt the tactics too much, because I don't think the tactics were particularly wrong. I liked our pressing, I liked our attacking play, and I don't think it was a particular part of our defensive tactics that was always the big problem. It was usually
in-game management. Sorry.
In-game management, yes. But at the same time, with injuries, how much can you really do? We don't know whether not bringing Billy Gilmore on. We don't concede. You never know. But it certainly was a bit weird, and you'd hope that things like I mentioned earlier, like the set pieces, that is something you can really work on, even if not all of them are there. But it is something you can work on, and you'd hope that things like that improve. And you brought up the January thing. Will we go for Zaha? Will we go for Atal? Obviously, the right back from Lille, which Nice. Sorry, I'm like, do we get rid of Aspie now? Obviously, the main talk is about next summer. But if we don't have the ban anymore for January, we'll have to wait and see what happens then. A striker, whatever. But yeah, I'm just generally looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting back into proper football, not international football, which is dead. Even though Austria went awful, beat Latvia 6-0, and then against got a decent draw away from home, even though we more than could have beaten them. But yeah, I guess we'll leave it here. And Jimmy, do you just want to do the outro?
Yes, of course. So, thank you for tuning in once again. We love all our listeners, But for those that haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. We'd be very grateful for that. Any of your subscriptions. Follow us on Twitter. We'd love to hit the 1,000 followers this year. And give us a good rating on iTunes. So that's all from us for today. Due to a lack of topics to talk about, but we'll be back next week with hopefully a lot more to talk about and a lot more positive to build on and to discuss. That's all from us. And as always, keep the blue flag flying high and up the Chelsea.